And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again. It's great to have the one and only Captain Maureen Bannon, fresh from her Turning Point USA speech, which we were just discussing, and I'm sure many of you will see. Maureen, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you for having me on again, Peter. I know it's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it's
Last year,
been months.
end of last year, I think. So time flies past. Always, and you look at guests and you think, crap, I haven't had that person for like a year. So to get them on. So thanks so much for giving us your time. I know you've got a lot on your plate with War Room and looking at all the posts that War Room put out, all the content that would keep any sane person busy. So thanks so much for your time. But a lot happening, and maybe we can jump into the first. Now um you're a child of the 90s. I'm a child of the 80s. So we
I'm a child of the 80s, the late
with
80s.
the late 80s. Okay, I was a child of the late 70s, very late 70s. So we're a decade apart. But here is Hulk Hogan, and I remember watching him kind of Saturday mornings, the whole wrestling. But here is a clip, and of course, Hulk Hogan has just passed away. And here he is, kind of reborn more recently, I think, supporting President Trump.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
No, that's a character. But yeah, just passed away at 71. I think, and I remember watching him all in the wrestling days. And always been out probably the most famous wrestler. But yeah, I don't know, was he always kind of politically engaged, or is it only more recently with President Trump? I don't know how kind of you perceived his more recent involvement in backing President Trump's campaign.
I don't honestly remember him being super involved in other political campaigns. I also, I hate to admit this, I didn't watch him, wrestle growing up like on Saturday mornings. However, I knew that he was an amazing wrestler and I knew of his career, and I always like watched clips of him growing up. I wasn't I wasn't very big into wrestling growing up, but he is a true American legend, and I do remember him from my childhood. And I think that it's amazing that he got involved in politics even at a late age. He knew that the America that we had under this previous administration was not a good one, and he came out and was vocal about it because we saw all of these ce celebrities coming out trying to support and run cover for Joe Biden and then support Kamala, and Hulk came out and he was a man of the people, just like President Trump. So, it touched very many people because a lot of people do remember watching him growing up, do remember seeing him in the wrestling ring for years. I mean, he wrestled for 40 years, and he's just an American legend. Tage Gill was on War Room and talked about how there's no one like Hulk, and no one will ever be like him. He's irreplaceable, but it's really sad to hear of his passing, especially because he was only 71 years old. I actually live not very far from him in the state of Florida. So, and he has a store, had a store and a restaurant called Hogan's Hangout.
Oh.
And he would actually just drop in at random times to the restaurant and to the store. It was on Clearwater Beach, and just a lot of people that come to visit, because Clearwater is an amazing place. Clearwater Beach is an amazing place to visit. They get to see this American legend. So I am truly honored that I got to see his speech at the RNC last summer, which that's where that clip was from. And also, he was at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. So I was up there. It was days before my dad was released from prison. And I happened to be at the rally, and he came out with the American flag. So it was truly amazing to get to see him twice speak and support our great president. So, and he will truly be missed.
No, he will be. He will be. Um, let's move on to some of the story, but let me just play. We normally play a Getter kind of promo clip, and most of the 15 seconds is Steve. So we'll play it now, just because it means I don't have to put it in post editing. So here is Steve talking about Getter and why he uses it, and then we'll go on to, I mean, so many stories. Literally, when you go through the War Room feed or Grace's feed, we'll have to get Mo actually pushing more stories out. That's another issue, but so much happening. But here is the Getter clip with Steve talking about why he uses it.
Download the Getter app right now. It's totally free. It's where I put up exclusively all of my content 24 hours a day. You want to know what Steve Bannon's thinking? Go to Getter.
So don't wait. Download the Getter app now.
Sign up for free and be part of the movement.
Well, there is one reason why Steve may use Getter more is because he's not necessarily an Elon Musk fan, but that's a whole other conversation. Also, we'll not get into. But let's go to the first. Let's go to the first story, and it is. I'll tell you what to bring it up, but is this about Lindsey Graham, and he's a strange figure. President Trump has been pro and then not pro. And now it's looking like Mark Lynch, he has launched a campaign to run against him. Do you want to just let us know a little bit about that, Mo, and kind of, I guess, his love-hate relationship with Lindsey Graham, but now Mark Lynch seems to be America First candidate, seems to be good. So tell us a little bit about it.
So the other day we had Mark Lynch, the Senate candidate, to run against Lindsey Graham on War Room, and he has been a longtime business owner, family business owner, a man of South Carolina, and that is America First. And we see Lindsey Graham constantly swaying more towards the middle, even to the left, more his opinions and his actions match ones that we see from the Democrats. And then when it comes time to election, or the run up to the election, he starts to swing more MAGA in order to get that MAGA vote, which honestly, we've seen trends. He's not getting as much of the MAGA vote because people are fed up with him. They're fed up with him supporting things that Democrats support. He is pushing for funding of Ukraine and our support of Ukraine. And that's not what the American people want, especially MAGA. They want America first. It should be focusing on things going on in this country. And then once we resolve the issues in this country, we can then help other countries. But we shouldn't be putting forth money into other countries first and then America last. That was what the previous administration did. And Lindsey Graham fully supports what in his actions, and by going over to Ukraine, saying things about funding to Ukraine, he supports America last and other countries first. And I think that, I forget who said this quote, and I should remember, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Lindsey Graham has shown us that he is not an America First candidate. Believe him. So I think that everyone needs to go check out Mark Lynch, and I believe his website, if I remember correctly from the show, is Lynch for SC. I believe that's it. But I know that it's not the number 4, it's spelled out FOR. But everyone needs to go check out Mark Lynch. He's running against Lindsey Graham, and he is an America First candidate.
Maybe that's coming up. Is I know your election cycles are every 2 years, so you never finish having elections there.
Well,
But
so,
so when's that then?
so 2026, every representative is up for reelection in Congress, but senators are every 6 years. So there's certain senators that were up for reelection in 2024. Some will be up for reelection in 2026. So it just the Senate is a little bit different than Congress, but so Lindsey Graham is up for reelection, but every representative that we have in this country, all 400 plus of them,
So
uh,
I
will be up for reelection in 2026. So they'll be starting to campaign or announce running for reelection here very shortly.
I know that'll be a key one. And make sure and follow it. I know many of the Warren Posse want to get involved in making sure that is a win for America First. Now, there's another story, and it was about this, and we talked about this a little bit before, about Nvidia and a U.S. company based over in California, but a huge company, the largest company I think in the world now by market cap. But this was a really strange story about actually getting parts into China, and I didn't realize this chip is worth. I think it was about 200,000 or something crazy amount. I looked at it and thought, oh, it's only a few £100. And I thought, no, it's a 000 after. But Nvidia AI worth $1 billion smuggled to China after Trump's export controls. And I guess this is about this clash between where, I mean, Trump has signed a number of, well, he signed a big AI bill, another big, beautiful bill, but he signed another one, I think yesterday before, and is trying to make America at the head of the AI revolution. And of course, China wants that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that clash? And I guess having an American company who is at the forefront of it is really good, and it's not necessarily a Taiwanese company.
I mean, I think that having an American company as the head of something is good. Now, AI, and especially after Joe Allen is always on the show talking about AI, I don't believe AI is a good thing, but it seems to be the way forward. It seems like we're not getting away from AI. I do think we need to find out if the smuggling was a nefarious act, because even though it's an American company, if they went against President Trump and you know committed a crime or violated a law, then it needs to be looked into, no matter if they're a US company or not.
No, it seems though President Trump was going to tighten those export controls, and at that point, strangely, these chips disappeared out of the country just in time. So it does seem to be something a little bit nefarious, but I'm sure we will wait and see how that develops. Um, Now, on to something completely different. This is Grace Chong's post, and always good to follow Grace and see what she is putting up. But this was about um, Ghislaine Maxwell. The headline was DOJ has productive meeting with Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Justice Department officials meet with lawyers for Jeffrey Epstein's former associate, who was convicted in connection with sex trafficking case. And this obviously fits into the Epstein Files being on Pam Bondi's desk and then not being on Pam Bondi's desk, and it was something completely different. This is a huge clash, I think, at the moment, on an issue that President Trump is really facing, and the support base wants these to be released. But tell us about this development with the DOJ actually interviewing Maxwell. Is this positive? Is it negative? What does this mean? Is this 5D chess? So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think it's positive. The American people, when they voted for President Trump this time around, they voted for full transparency. You know, the JFK files, the Epstein files, and for this administration or Pam Bondi to go, there's no Epstein files. There are Epstein files. There's no Epstein files. They're like, we want full transparency as the American people. So I believe if you're going to say that there are no Epstein files and then Miss Maxwell is in federal prison, that what is it? Were there no Epstein files? Then why is she in federal prison? She's in federal prison, so clearly there are Epstein files. So I think that full transparency, we want that. Release the files, release transcripts. And I know there are some judges trying to block the release of transcripts, and then release her answers to this interview. I know that's a little more difficult because, you know, gotta get lawyers and everything else involved, but I think that the American people want full transparency. We don't want the government to continue to cover up or hide things. That we want to know all of these things. And, you know, they're releasing information about JFK's assassination. They need to do the same with Epstein. And the fact that now they're saying, oh, there's no show of foul play, that Epstein did unalive himself or kill himself in prison. You know, we want full transparency. If you're going to release some files, release all of them.
No, but it is the curious case that you can have someone, different people arrested, Epstein and Maxwell arrested for a crime, this supposedly huge crime of trafficking children, and yet no one actually partook of this crime and has been found guilty. It kind of doesn't add up, and I don't know how Pam Bondi can make it add up.
Yes, me neither, honestly. The fact that she said the files were on her desk, then she did this whole thing with conservative influencers and they had binders and they came out, and, you know, some of those influencers, when they came out, there's one of Rogan O'Hanley and he's holding, or DC Drano, he's holding the binder up and smiling like, yes, I got the files. But then you're gonna say there's no files. And I remember he got, and I know DC Drano, he got dragged on Twitter because of that, because some people were like, oh, you're smiling like it's a victory, you got the files. But then you seem to be happy about children being sex trafficked. So it brings into that question. So, you know, we want answers. And for government officials to say there are files, there's no files, there are files, there's no files, it causes more distrust in the government by doing that. There's already a ton of distrust in the United States government. By saying that there aren't files when we know there are, you're creating even more. And how do you expect to hold seats in the House, gain seats in the House, keep a Republican Congress or House and Senate when you're doing this?
Yeah, and I think those files also had part one on it. So I think, if I remember correctly, so waiting for the next parts, but it seems though part two does not follow part one. But I know this will follow this closely. I know Warren will continue to actually look into this and not back down. There, J6, this committee that's been put together, and here we have House Republicans create new panel aimed at undermining J6 committee. And I'm trying to work out exactly what this is about. And days after Trump pardoned the Capitol's violent attackers. This is Politico, so it's not my point of view, so I'm just reading the headline. Republican Barry Loudermilk will lead a new subcommittee investigating what led to the attack. What are your thoughts? Do you think we're going to get to the bottom of this, or do you think this is another cover-up? Because Trump has pardoned many of them, and it seems that that's where we're moving. And like all of these things, I think it hits up to, well, in the UK we'd call it the civil service, the deep state, in effect, the inner workings of government, that take a long time to change. But yeah, this new group that are going to look at this, how did you read it when this came out?
So the article that you're referencing that's up on the screen came out January 22nd, so right after the inauguration. And it's now July, and we haven't seen or heard of this other subcommittee to go after the January 6th committee. So once again, that just shows that some Republicans are a lot of talk, but we need action. As my dad says, action, action, action. All these things are great. Yes, we need a subcommittee to look into what happened on January 6th. And honestly, the January 6th committee that the previous administration had, because that was an unconstitutional committee. And I've personally had effects of that committee happen to my family. I've dealt with being away from my father for months because of that unconstitutional committee. So I think that there, yes, definitely needs to be another committee. I think that we need to be more action, less talk. The fact that this is now, 7 months after, honestly, 7 months to almost to the day after that article came out, and we haven't heard of anything coming from a subcommittee to investigate January 6th. So I think we need to be more action so that we can give people more trust into the government instead of create more distrust in the government, and so that we can actually continue to have Republicans stay in power and America First Republicans stay in power.
Yeah, America First Republicans. That's the key line, I think.
Mhm.
Here we have again something very different. This is Thomas Massie posting, and says, "I see some people are excited. Real Donald Trump can make recess appointments to fill out his staff now. Congress have recessed for August. Bad news. Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune plan to convene and adjourn every 4 or 5 days to block Trump from making those appointments." And Steve points out in a short comment, huge problem, which this is. I'm blown away by the fact that a Republican-led House and Senate still have not approved all of President Trump's nominees. But I guess Massie, obviously, being an experienced person on the Hill, he will have his finger on the pulse. So I guess what he's putting out is true, but it certainly doesn't look good for Johnson or Thune.
It definitely doesn't. And, the fact that this isn't the first time, Thomas Massie or Representative Massie's tweet is not the first time that I've heard that Senate and congressional Republicans are trying to block President Trump's appointees or things or his agenda that he'd like to get passed. So it's extremely alarming that Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune are doing this, but honestly, it's not shocking, which once again, as I've said twice now, it shows distrust, American people's distrust. It's not giving them trust in this Congress and then in the Senate. If they're going to block the president that was appointed and elected, not appointed, elected by the American people, then you should work to get his agenda and his appointees approved and, through the different committees
Yep.
or appointment process. But I think that it is going to come down probably to recess appointments to fill out some of those positions because Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune aren't willing to do what the American people want them to do. They seem to have their own agenda and not the best interest of the American people, because clearly the American people wanted President Trump elected. They voted in record numbers in November to get him elected. So why would you fight against the American people, your own constituents, too, and block who he wants as part of his administration?
It's the most confusing thing, and I think, yeah, everyone can see what is happening in broad daylight, and you don't really want the MAGA base, the America First base, to turn against you. I think that's kind of how it is looking, if they don't get their house in order and really move forward. So yeah,
And I think that you will have people trying to primary Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune when it comes time for their reelections if they continue to push against what President Trump and his administration are trying to get passed. And in this case, his appointees confirmed. I think that a lot of people have had issues with both Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune. So I don't see them this next election cycle for either one of them not having a primary opponent.
moving on to something very different, and it's over to Japan. And obviously, President Trump has just signed a huge trade deal with Japan. And this story, I think Steve did post from The Guardian, and it is about Japanese first, as not something you kind of hear or expect to hear, but Japanese first breakthrough by right-wing populists sparks fears of anti-foreigner backlash in Japan. And it says about the huge numbers of visas which they've had for foreigners coming in. And Japan has always been a fairly monoculture, has kept its traditions, its heritage, its history, its culture, very different from many other countries. But I just want to get your thoughts on this, Mo, because we've had a populist move all across Europe, with many countries wakening up to mass immigration, which is a thing that's concerned the Japanese. And it's exciting to see this concern of the change of your culture and society happening country by country. Maybe even Britain will actually have that as well. But yeah, all across Europe, we've seen CPAC conferences all across Europe. We actually have seen CPAC over in Japan. But yeah, it looks like this is where the world is going. People are wakening up. This immigration was a key part of President Trump's campaign, has been a key part of populist parties in Europe, and now seems to be all the way across in Japan. So how do you kind of see this swing, this sweep, as a US citizen?
I think it's a good thing that Japan is wanting to be Japan first. I think that we've seen that in certain European countries as well. It's that country first. I think that it's a good thing that Japan wants to be Japan first and not take on a lot of immigration, just like us here in America, America first, US citizens first, should be Japanese citizens first. And I think that that's a good thing. I'd like to see more of it and more countries follow suit. So I will definitely be keeping my eyes on Japan. As you know, I'm not an expert on Japan. I've actually never been to Japan, but I would love to go at some point. But I think that it's a good thing to see that they want to put a lot of their citizens want to put their country first and want it to be just them and not, run with, I shouldn't say run with immigrants, but the fact that we've seen other countries, what immigration and mass immigration has done to those countries. And you don't want that to happen to Japan. So what has gone on in some European countries that we've seen with mass immigration and taking in refugees, that is why I think that Japan, as we see in the article that you put up, that it's a lot of them are Japan first because they've seen what happens when you allow mass immigration and what it can do to that country.
Yeah, and I think it's not immigration, it's mass immigration, uncontrolled immigration, unfettered. It's when people see their whole communities change, and we've seen that all across England, and obviously that is impacting over in Japan.
For example, and not with regards to Japan, but I was in Germany when I was in the army for a training rotation, and I was in 3 different parts of Germany, and I thought it was beautiful. I was over in Poland and Hungary for CPAC Poland and CPAC Hungary, and at CPAC Hungary, I was talking to a German couple, and they asked if I was traveling through Germany on the way back to the States. I said, "Yes, I'm traveling through Frankfurt." They asked if I had security because if I did, it would be great to go explore Frankfurt. If I didn't have security, it wasn't safe as a female traveling by myself because of the mass immigration and the issues that they have in Germany with refugees. So the fact that back in 2014 it was beautiful and I mean, we started to see refugees being taken into Germany back in 2014. So I guess prior to that and up until the very beginning of when I was there, you were safe to travel through most of Germany. Now, to be told you need security if you're a female or someone to be there with you when you're a female, it's extremely alarming. And that's because we've had open borders, mass immigration, taking in refugees. So, and I don't mean small amounts of refugees, like mass immigration with mass refugees and not vetting them properly.
And this is why the AfD are the top polling party at the moment, and why they want to make them a terror organization to stop the German people voting for who they want. So yeah, the deep state running scared even in Europe. Here's it's not a clip actually. It's a post of Stephen Miller talking, and it is about this children that have come into the UK, being trafficked into the UK, and of course this was under the Biden regime. But the post is Stephen Miller just announced the number of missing children trafficked by Joe Biden in America is around 450,000, just under 500,000. Democrats have committed crimes to which they can never be forgiven. And I know I've spoken to Jakob Boyens about this and his concern of trafficking of people and of children, and now people trafficking is as profitable as anything else. If you look at drugs, has always been, I guess, a way of bringing in income for the underworld, and now it seems people trafficking. But yeah, this happened, open borders, anyone could come over, and it seems though, well, the Trump administration have a lot on their hands to try and rescue children, and they're doing the right thing. The children can't vote. You could actually look at it. Actually, we should focus on other areas, but it's the right thing to do. Give us your thoughts on this horrendous situation with so many children. They're simply lost in somewhere in America, and the Trump administration is trying to actually find them and save them.
I think it's extremely alarming and disgusting that it's 450,000 children under the Biden administration. The fact that Republicans have been calling this out and certain America First Republicans have been calling this out for years, and everyone said, "You're crazy, this is not happening. President Trump's the one separating families." No. President Obama and President Biden were the ones that were allowing sex trafficking of children and separation of families. We saw that, everyone wants to say that President Trump, his first administration, put kids in cages. That was actually the Obama administration. And then we see this 450,000 children sex trafficked under the Biden administration. When they had an open border, you had children coming in with adults that the Biden administration said, "Oh, it's a child and an adult must be their child." They did no background check to determine if that child was actually the child of the adult they were traveling with. So, we saw a lot of children come in and the Biden administration, "Oh, they're with an adult, so it must be their child." No, that's why we have this number and this problem that the Trump administration is trying to fix is because there was no vetting and the Biden administration didn't do their job when it came to immigration into this country. Had it been done properly, legal immigration where families that were fleeing countries and claiming asylum in the United States and done it properly, then we wouldn't see children separated from their families, trying to find these children and reunite them with their families. Because once they come into the United States, Biden administration didn't keep tabs on them. So they've probably been trafficked multiple times around this country. And now we're having to locate them and reunite them, which is a good thing that we are trying to locate and reunite them, but it shouldn't be happening. It should have never happened to begin with. Had we had a closed border, legal immigration, then we would have had families applying for citizenship in the United States. Families, children with their biological parents or adopted parents, instead of coming in with any adult and trafficking them.
Yeah, there are reasons why we have those proper immigration processes where you can claim to be in another country. One of those reasons is obviously to protect families and children, and to make sure they are safe. And I guess when you tear up the playbook, then this is what happens. Um, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has really been shaking up, and I was actually going to play President Trump speaking, but I thought I'll just bring up this headline instead. But it's sending shockwaves, and this was interesting because it was Miranda Devine who wrote, of course, "Laptop from Hell," but some I think is more in the left, but really has done a lot of work to expose Hunter Biden. But this was her post in the New York Post. Miranda Devine, "The country deserves better than the Dems' cracked out clown car elite media ignoring Gabbard's bombshell." And this is about Obama and what he did to try and stop President Trump in every way back in 2016. There are also a lot of reports now about Hillary Clinton and whether she was of sound mind and what she was on and all that hidden. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, I think, well, some people had concerns maybe of Tulsi Gabbard when I've talked to them. But everything she's done is, wow, hell, this is brilliant. This is another expose. And she said the documents she has are huge. And this, what are your thoughts? President Trump, you thought maybe he might hold back and not go after Obama, but he's doing it.
I'm very glad he's doing it. And I think that in this article that Miranda Devine wrote for the New York Post, we see that the New York Times and the Washington Post are running cover yet again for the Democrats. And they really don't like the fact that a Democrat opened their eyes to how messed up their political party is and left the Democrat Party and became a Republican and is now in the administration. So the fact that Tulsi Gabbard did that just adds more fuel to their fire that they're not going to cover or address what she put out in that briefing that she gave on Wednesday. It just shows you, they ran cover for Joe Biden. They tried to run cover for how terrible Kamala was and is, and now they're doing it again because it's now a Republican, and she's going after a former president, a Democratic former president. So I'm very grateful that President Trump and this administration are going after Obama because I think there's a lot of things that he did that need to be investigated. But it just shows you that there's action, not just talk. There's action going on now. So it can restore a little bit of faith in the government that the American people have lost. So I'm not surprised though that the New York Times and the Washington Post didn't cover it because they are not legitimate news sources anymore, in my opinion, because they've run cover so much and kept so much from the American people.
No, completely. Here, there are two more stories we'll touch on, and it's another media mouthpiece, and this is Stephen Colbert, and this is the FCC. The FCC head reveals brutal truth behind DNC spokesperson Stephen Colbert's cancellation as Liberals whine over late show's demise. And Steve's put up immediate investigation of CBS should commence. Colbert's total losses could amount to 500 million, a contribution in kind to Democrat Party. This is, I guess, another example of how the Democrats used media to put forward their message, and the American people, I guess, were told this is vanilla, this is just news reporting, but always biased. And now this is coming out. But I've watched him numerous times, but he obviously is an American institution because he's been on the screen so long. But what were your thoughts? I guess it was jubilation to see, yes, he's now lost his position as one of the talk show hosts.
I would say it's about time, the fact that he was on air as long as he was. It's about time that his show was canceled, but it just shows you that the American people don't believe mainstream media. We've seen multiple shows that had Democrat anchors or hosts that were running cover, once again, Joe Biden, that he was in great health, that he was perfectly of sound mind, that Kamala, she was perfectly fine, nothing going wrong with her. The fact that they did that and we knew otherwise, I think that it's about time. And the fact that he was on air for so long, it's a little frustrating, but at least we won't have to see him on air anymore. And that's a good thing. I agree with my dad that an investigation of CBS should commence immediately. And I think that he and his other anchors and hosts of shows that did this and ran cover for so long, they caused the Democratic Party to fall.
Yep. The final one is on Israel, and this has also been a interesting talking point, I think, within MAGA, who generally have been pro-Israel because it's better to have Israel in the middle of the Middle East than not Israel, the only democratic free society. But that doesn't mean you give the government free rein in what it's doing. And it was this from Jason Jones: "We are deeply grateful to Ambassador Huckabee for speaking out against the desecration of holy places and condemning the Israeli violence in Tabah. Any desecration to holy place, doesn't matter whether it's a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, is unacceptable. To commit an act of sacrilege by desecrating a place that's supposed to be a place of worship is an act of terror and a crime." And maybe the last person I thought who'd be calling something out, maybe critiquing the Israeli government, would be Mike Huckabee. But you can be, and I know your dad's calls a Christian Zionist, as would I, absolute Christian Zionist, but that doesn't mean you necessarily agree with all the actions of the Israeli government. And certainly hitting one of the very few churches in Gaza is huge concern. And it seems this is also a concern, attacking churches in maybe the West Bank or elsewhere. But yeah, this is kind of America first or Israel first. I think it can be America first and Israel second, but it can't really be the other way around. So how do you see this action by Ambassador Huckabee?
Well, I don't always agree with Ambassador Huckabee, but in this case, I do. That you don't desecrate a, a church, religious building. With regards to what you said, I think that you can be in support of Israel, but be America first in support of Israel, not Israel first as a American citizen. And, I think a lot of people either don't understand or take issue with it. You can support Israel and their fight against Islamic extremism, but you can also be America first in support of Israel. That doesn't mean that if you say you're America first, that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. It doesn't mean that you don't support Israel. You do. You just want support of your country first. So I think, and in this statement, it's kind of the gist of what Ambassador Huckabee is saying, that just because he supports Israel doesn't mean he supports the Israeli government destroying a church in Gaza. So, you know, I think that you also have to call into question that you can't blanketly support Israel and the Israeli government if they do something like this. So just as, people think that President Trump's supporters are in this cult or a MAGA cult, and that we don't think that President Trump can do any wrong. No one is perfect. People make mistakes. You might not always agree with things that President Trump does, but you support him. Just like we support Israel, but we want support. We are America first. So I know that's very long-winded, but I just wanted to point that out because I've seen comments recently on stuff clipped from War Room that or even just things that I'm tagged in on Twitter saying that my dad is spewing Jewish hate, which he's not. Just because he's not blanketly saying, Israel first, that doesn't mean that War Room, myself are anti-Semitic. So, I've gotten pretty frustrated seeing that because that is not the case. And I think that people need to take the time to understand what he is saying and what we are saying.
No, absolutely. And I've been perplexed talking to Jewish friends who some of them see that distinction and some of them don't. And you can be pro-Israel, you can be a Zionist, absolutely. Israel have a right to exist, and 3,000 years of biblical history, but that doesn't mean you necessarily agree. Whenever we've had left-wing governments in Israel, the right have probably been very quick to condemn, and just because it's Bibi doesn't mean he should get a free pass. So I 100% agree with you, Mo, and I've been really surprised at some of the criticisms that Steve has got over that. So yeah, America first, by all means, Israel second. But yeah, that's a position which is a common sense position, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Mo, thank you as always for coming on and giving us your thoughts. Always so much happening, busy week, and obviously US focus, because whenever you UK guests on, more UK focus. But thanks so much for giving us your thoughts on all those issues.
Thank you for having me on, and I hope that it's not almost another year before I come back on.
We'll get you on earlier. Don't worry. You've said it now, so it'll happen earlier. But thanks, Mo, so much.
Thank you.